Hello, friends, and welcome back to Dare Me to Prosper. My name is Avery. I'm your host, and this is episode 27. And today I am bringing my sister back because we just like to talk, and we are talking about spiritual gifts in kids. We have 6 kids between us, and we have had this conversation before in the past, and so I thought it would be a great episode for her to come on and us to kind of talk about things that we've seen in our kids, how to nourish gifts in kids, how to talk to them about their gifts, how to help them not be scared of their gifts, and all of the in-between. So if you are a parent or you have kids in your life, this is going to be a great episode. A quick reminder to leave a review if you have not already. Please leave a review. Please leave a review. It makes a big deal. It makes a big difference. And I'm just very grateful for it. So please leave a review if you are enjoying the podcast. Also, little update. I mentioned in last week's episode that I launched a Patreon channel. And on that channel, I now have 2 tiers. So there is one tier, which is $5 a month. And in that tier, you get a bonus episode every week that's going to be a little bit more personal, a little bit more behind the scenes. Also going to be more focused around relationships and things like that. So that is on the Patreon. There will be a link in the show notes. In that $5 a month tier, you also get early access to the regular episodes, as well as the ability to ask questions and participate in Q&A videos, which only patrons will be allowed to do. I recently added a monthly membership called the Prosper membership, which is the second tier of the Patreon, and it is $22 a month. And in that tier, you get everything in tier 1, extra episodes, the early release, the access to Q&A episodes, as well as a live group channeling call every month. So I will channel for the group in a live call each month. You will get discounts on any coaching and workshops or courses that I release here moving forward. I will do a raffle for a free psychic reading also every month. So anybody that is a part of that second tier of the membership will get put into a raffle to win a free psychic reading. And then I'm also going to be doing a monthly coaching call on a spiritual topic that members can vote on. So if there's a specific topic that is coming up or that the group agrees that everybody is interested in, I will do a coaching call on that specific topic as well. Essentially, that monthly membership is going to be a lot more talking to me directly, participating in group calls, and just a little bit more one-on-one, a little bit more personal, a little bit more we are working together as a group and communicating and getting on calls together. And so that's going to be really fun, and I'm really excited to see the community that kind of grows within that. So I just wanted to let you know that that is now live. And as always, you can always book a one-on-one personal psychic reading where I go straight to spirit on your behalf and ask any questions you may have, or just channel a direct message if you are open to hearing what spirit wants to say to you. So depending on where you are in your spiritual journey and what you're needing and how much input or support you're needing, all of these are different ways that I am just able to connect with you guys and continue on this spiritual journey together. Okay, so let's get into this episode with my sister, Allie. Just a heads up, there are a few curse words in this episode. If you've got little ears around, just something to be mindful of. Also, speaking of the Patreon, there is a section of this episode where we kind of got off topic and started talking about infertility. I ended up removing that portion of this recording because it wasn't directly on topic with the spiritual gifts in kids. It was more backstory, but it is such an important conversation that I think a lot of women can relate to. So what I did was I took out that section and I actually did put that on the Patreon channel as its own separate episode. So again, if that is something that you're interested in, on the Patreon, my first episode was really deep diving into my very recent divorce, very recent separation, not fully divorced yet. And I talked about that on episode 1 of the Patreon. It's very vulnerable. It's very close to home. If you're interested in that, that is on the Patreon. And then now I have also added an episode where, like I said, we talked about spirituality and infertility and specifically my sister's journey and kind of how she walked through that and her story of how she birthed her 2 girls and where she is today. So again, the link to that will be in the show notes, but let's get into this episode with my sister. Hello, Allie.
Hi.
Welcome back to the podcast.
I'm Yes, I'm excited to chat with you
I
more about
know. We
all the spiritual
we got a
things.
lot of good feedback actually. I don't even know if I've told you this, but we got a lot of good feedback
Mm-mm.
on the deconstructing Christianity episode.
Really?
Yes, like that one, that is consistently one of my top episodes, and like
Oh,
yes,
interesting.
so that one I've
Cool.
gotten a lot of good feedback, and it's just one of the most listened to. So glad to have you back. I feel like this is a good,
Yay.
we just bounce off of each other really well, obviously, because we're sisters and
Yeah.
we can just talk. So I think that helps. Just being in a more relaxed state, we can just like ditch the outline if we
Yeah.
have to and just talk because we're good at that.
Yeah.
So we're doing this episode on spiritual gifts in children. So why don't you just refresher, if nobody's listened to that episode, give a little intro and talk about the kids you have.
Yeah. So I have three kids ranging from almost 1 to 11. So all girls. My 1-year-old is a Cancer,
Oh,
like
good call.
my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And then my 3-year-old is a Capricorn. She was very close to being a Sagittarius.
Mm.
Like me, I'm a Sagittarius, and my oldest, who's 11, is also a Sagittarius. So we both have that like fire energy, which sometimes is really fun and sometimes is like
Yeah. You know what?
not.
I would love to compare one day your chart. Do you want to say names of the girls or no?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I have my youngest is London, and then my middle is Willa, and then my oldest is Clara.
Yes. Okay. So
Yeah.
Clara being a Sagittarius too, I would be,
Hmm.
because you guys are so different. Like you're both Sagittariuses, but
Hmm.
obviously I'm sure your charts are completely different. I would be really curious
Hmm.
to compare like your full charts side by side because you guys are so different. I mean, you definitely like the fire energy
Yes.
is evident in both of you, but the way that you guys,
The way that it comes
yeah,
up, like it's interesting, like the things that we enjoy in terms of like almost like the maximalist energy
mm,
of like a bountiful, just like liking a lot of like life and like color and
yeah,
texture and like
abundance,
the art
beauty.
kind of,
Well, that's yes.
yes, really in the beauty
Mm-hmm.
like kind of thing. And that, obviously she's a middle schooler and I'm an adult, so that looks
Mm-hmm.
different, but I can understand her brain a lot, even though we're in obviously completely different stages in
Yeah.
life.
Well,
So
and
that's been cool.
I believe Jupiter is the ruling planet for Sagittarius, which is like the planet of like abundance and beauty and like all of
Hmm.
the, so that makes perfect sense too.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a tangent, but that would be really interesting. Okay, so you've got a 1, 3, and 11-year-old. I have
Hmm.
a 5, 8, and 11-year-old. And
Hmm.
so my youngest is 5. Her name is Emma, and she's a Scorpio. She's a very scary,
She is like a true
she's a
Scorpio.
true
Like,
Scorpio. She's a little terrifying in the best way.
uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
she is definitely like, she is the sassiest by all out of all my kids. She's certainly the sassiest. She's just she's shy at first, but she's genuinely like a big bubbly personality underneath.
Hmm.
She's a lot of fun. She is just like life of the
There's
party.
like such a fierceness to her
Yes.
that is like there's like a strength there and like a protectiveness
Yeah,
energy
yeah,
of
yeah.
like,
Yes. So I'm really just obviously interested to see like how that expands as she grows up, because yes, she's a bubble of all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
Bowen is my only son. He's 8 and he's a Virgo, and he is the sensitive of the bunch. So he is like a deep feeler. He's got a lot of deep feelings. He's very sensitive, very empathic, very just he's the one who's very aware of his surroundings and very yes, just like sensitive and notices, picks up on all the little things. Very sweet, also sassy when he's 8, but sweet,
Right. Yeah.
gentle and sweet when he wants to be. And then
Yeah.
my 11-year-old is a Taurus, and so she is stubborn, really smart, brilliant, has the memory
So
of like an
smart.
ox, like just remembers everything forever, remembers like the tiniest
Hmm.
details from her 3rd birthday party, just crazy memory. She's my one who's very interested in like the occult, and she loves astrology and spirit animals and spirit guides and all of the things. But she expresses her emotions less outwardly. She's more inward, and she
Yeah.
notices a lot. She's very observant, but she really like holds it
Yep.
inside, doesn't like tell you everything that she's observing and processing. So my 3 and yours too really are just totally all different personalities.
Hmm. Yeah.
So it's wild, but that gives us a lot of you know, it gives us a lot to work with
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're all so
Yeah.
different.
It's cool. Like going back to my 1-year-old and my 3-year-old, like my 1-year-old is like, Cancer is known for being like emotional, kind of, all the stereotypes, but she definitely is very like, we were just talking about this, like more sensitive in like her senses, like her like physical, like sight, hearing, touch, like all of those things. There's like a high sensitivity, high emotional kind of aspect, and then which really aligns with Cancer. And then my middle, who's a Capricorn, is very like, just do it. Like she just does it. Like she's a worker, like in a
Independent.
sense of, she's very
Mhm.
independent, very like good on her own, super friendly, super social, like carries herself like an
I will
adult, like
say, as
truly.
someone like not her mom, so it's like I'm not even like biased about this. She is truly the most extroverted child I have ever met from such a young age.
Yes.
Just not afraid
Yes.
of anything, loves to talk to people, loves to
Hmm.
bond with people. Like it is such a sight. And even as a baby, she was
Yeah.
never cared who was holding her, like just was so,
Yeah.
it's so crazy how different
She
they are.
has an extraordinary amount of like confidence and like, okay, I can do
Yeah.
it. And then she just does it. She's like, Mom, can I go talk to that guy? And I'm like, sure. And she's like,
She's
okay. And she just walks up and starts a
I know.
conversation with this grown
You
man.
couldn't pay my
And
kids
like,
to do that. It's so
I know.
funny.
I mean, it's truly like everywhere we go. She's like, can I? The other day we were out at dinner and there was a man, we were out this like, it was like a biker bar, but we just wanted a burger. So we had like our 3 girls and we were at this biker bar and this man walks up on stage. He's wearing a leather jacket with like patches, like tattoos, like long hair. He was setting up on stage to like play for the night. And the whole time we're sitting at the table, she was like, can I go talk to him? Can I go talk to him? And we are like, you need to eat your dinner. Like, finish. We're like, okay, if you finish your dinner, then you can go and talk to him. She was like, okay, bet. Like, so she like finishes her dinner, walks up to him and is like, hey, can I get on stage? And he was like, sure. And so she steps up and they start chatting. Like, Hunter and I are just sitting at a table, like watching her and just like dying laughing. Like, the whole restaurant is like, what is happening? And he starts playing Baby Shark for her,
My
like on the
gosh.
guitar. And she was like, do you know any Alan Jackson?
No, she didn't. Is she
Yes, she
into
did.
Alan Jackson now?
She's very into
That is
Alan
so
Jackson.
funny.
And he was like, I am embarrassed. So because she was like, can you play the Hoochie Coochie song, which is the Chattahoochee,
Love
and which is
her.
her favorite song. And he was like, I'm embarrassed because I don't actually know how to play that song. And I don't know. It's just
That
her.
is,
Like she's
I
just
love
like
her
can
so much
carry herself
because
so like,
like when I think of kids having past lives, Willa is exactly what I think of because she just has all of
yeah.
these so like just such interesting like quirks and like things that she's not afraid of and the way that she talks to people. I'm like, she must have been like she was the mayor in the past life or something.
It is
Like,
fully her because my husband and I are like full on
yeah,
introverts. Like
yeah.
2020 lockdown, we're like, this is
Yeah,
great. Like this
exactly.
is
Same.
not a problem for us. Like we can happily stay at home and not talk to anyone
Yeah.
ever. Thank God she wasn't born yet because she would have like
You would have
crippled
been
her
like
little soul. Like
FaceTiming
just would have.
everybody, like
Oh my gosh. Yes. If you FaceTime her, she's like, cool. Can I talk to everybody in the house? Like
pass
it,
the phone, keep it going. She's so funny. I love it. I'm like
yeah.
so excited to see like Willa is going to do some big things when she grows up because she just
No.
has to. Like there's just no
Yeah.
other option for her because she just like
Hmm.
that's her energies. Like she needs to like be talking to everyone and doing things and like, so I'm just like I can't wait to see where she puts all that energy because it's going to
I
be
know.
amazing.
It could be, I mean, she, again, like she doesn't feel held back by a lot. So
Yeah.
like, I feel like whatever she decides to do, she's just going to
Yeah.
do it. Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it'll be
Oh,
cool.
that's so true. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well,
Yeah.
speaking of Willa, because as I told you a minute ago, we are when I started thinking about this episode on spiritual gifts and children, the first thing that really came to mind was Willa, because we've had these
Hmm.
conversations where there's spiritual gifts in everyone, right? Everybody has spiritual gifts, no matter if you think you do, if you think you don't, you do. But sometimes it's more subtle. It's not always like I can talk to past ones. It's, sometimes it's being an empath. Sometimes it's the way that your energy affects other people, even when you're not trying, so that's a gift. Like, you could be a healer and not even know you're a healer. It's just because your energy, when it's around people, is healing, so it's not always this very overt thing. However, with Willa and what we've talked about before and what you're going to share is how she's had some moments that even like freaked you out a little bit, right? Like, so really quick, before we do that, let's kind of go over, there's so many gifts. I mean, I don't want to say that just because we don't list something that it's, a gift that somebody can't have.
Right.
But the main ones are like the clairs, right? So
clairsentience,
clairaudience, claircognizance,
clairvoyance.
Clairvoyance is clear seeing. Claircognizance is clear knowing. Clairsentience is clear feeling. Clairaudience is clear hearing. And so now the way that they can get a little bit misunderstood is like, if you have clear hearing, clairaudience, that doesn't always mean, like, sometimes it can mean like actual hearing in your ears, and sometimes it can mean like a song starts playing in your head. You know what I mean? So like clairaudience can kind of, it be anything that you're kind of hearing, whether it's outside or inside of your mind. Clairvoyance. Clairvoyance. So that's usually, again, clairvoyance doesn't always, in its strongest expression, it can be seeing things like in front of you out in the world,
like visually, like an entity,
or a ghost or whatever it is, like seeing movement, seeing things that other people can't see. But it can also be getting visions or visual downloads in your head, visions, like all that kind of stuff would also be clairvoyance.
And like the symbols.
Any kind of like, mental pictures or things that come in, which that's really common. And I think a lot of people don't think of that as being a gift, which is kind of why I want to bring it up. Cause it's like, I know you've had like visions before, and then you can like see a ghost, or you could like, I'll get symbols and things in my head or images. Like I'll get that a lot, or dreaming. I think dreaming would also technically be considered prophetic dreaming would be clairvoyance. And then there's
I think that would be clairvoyance.
Clairsentience, which is more like empathic. So that's clear feeling. So emotionally, like picking up
like gut reactions.
Yes, gut reactions.
Like you walk into a space and you're like, I can sense like there's a lot of intensity here, or like there's anger, or like there's like a coldness, or it can be like temperature and emotion, right? Like
any kind of like, usually it's emotion, because there's claircognizance, which is more like information, but clairsentience is more like emotion based. So any kind of like you picking up on other people's emotions. So if you're an empath, you're automatically like clairsentient. And like you described, like walking into a room and feeling like the intensity of anger or coldness, or, whatever it is. Or like you hear people talking about walking into a room and picking up on the emotions of what ends up being like a ghost or an entity or a past person, like feeling like, oh, they're angry. Like I can sense that. So that would be that. And then claircognizance is clear knowing, which this is what I tend to pick up on. And I think, again, this is way more common than people give it credit for. But it's like when you just know something, or you receive information and you didn't know something a few minutes before, and now you do, whether it's kind of,
it just kind of comes to you.
It kind of comes to you, whether you're asking for it, sometimes you're not asking for it. And I think that's actually a pretty common one, but a lot of times I think people maybe misinterpret that for like their own thoughts, or maybe like an internal gut instinct. I guess gut instinct could also be that, but it's just like receiving it from spirit or from the other side kind of. So then I know there's a couple more, but I don't know them off the top of my head. Those are the main ones. And then there's a lot more. There's like being a healer, which again, that could look like all sorts of different things. You could be a doctor, you could be a Reiki practitioner, you could be an artist, like anything where you are
an herbalist. You're where you're actually using.
Anything where you're like helping people heal, whether it's like emotionally or like music. You could be a musician and be a healer where you're helping heal people through music. Like it's such a,
I think like through the arts, there's definitely like through creativity, there's definitely a lot of like spiritual knowing that comes through.
People who can see auras or see energies. and I've talked about these in some other podcasts where it's not like sometimes things just happen to you and you don't consider it a spiritual gift, but if you experienced it, it is tied some way, shape, or form back to a spiritual gift. Like I've talked before in episodes how I've seen like movement, like not, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't look like a white or a dark like ghost image, but I could see it's like like if you could see wind, that's what it looked like. Like it's
Yeah.
translucent and
Yeah.
see through, but I would see it move.
Seeing a movement. Yeah.
Like
The energy
technically that's
moving
like,
through.
okay, that's like seeing energy. But if that just happens to you, like it does so many people, they're not thinking, oh, I have the gift of, clairvoyance. But so many
Right.
people
Right.
do. So I think that's why it's important to bring it up like as with kids, because a lot of us as adults are being like, oh, I have this gift, or oh, I can actually develop this and get better at it and grow it into something serious. So if we are allowing our kids to do that when they're young, really gives them
Mm-hmm.
so many more years to practice like developing it, or just getting used to the idea of like, oh, I'm someone that does have spiritual gifts, and that's not weird, that's normal, we all have these gifts. So okay, do you feel like we've covered enough to like where you can,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Just to kind of, so for people to pick up on like different things that I'm saying or thinking. But yeah, so my 3-year-old, from like a young age, and I, I imagine maybe a lot of parents encounter this and just think,
Brush it
oh, it's
off,
nothing,
or
which I did for a long
mm-hmm.
time until she got older. And I was like, maybe this was something. Anytime that we would be in her room and I would be feeding her around like 1 year old, old enough to be able to like eye track things, I would feed her and her head would be like looking behind me. And behind me is just a corner of a wall. Like there's like a gap, but it's really just a wall. Like there's not really anything for her to look at. And normally when I'm feeding her, like her bottle or, rocking her, it would be like the lights are somewhat dim. So, and this would happen in different locations too. Like even when we were traveling, like I distinctly remember it happening when we were like staying in an Airbnb in London. And I was like, what's in this house? But she will start like tracking something and just like looking and clearly like following the movement of something. And I would like look and be like, okay, there's not a bug. Like, what are you looking at? And it was to the point where it would like really start to freak me out. But I was like, whatever, it's a baby. She's just moving her body. Maybe she sees some dust or whatever. And I just kind of would play it off. But it always kind of stuck in my head of like, what was she seeing? And now that I have London, I kind of like expected like, oh, she'll probably do the same sort of thing. And she doesn't. She hasn't like, and she is very sensitive to like, again, her body, like physical touch and sound and everything, like the lights in the room, like all of that. She does not do any of that, like, like seeing something, like tracking in the room. But I was just like, okay, like, all right, maybe, Willow was seeing something. So that was kind of the first thing that happened when she was young. And then when she started talking, again, my 3-year-old, I mean, people, when they meet her, they think she's like 5 or 6 because she just has like a very,
such a big
like,
vocabulary.
she has a huge
Mm-hmm.
vocabulary and is a very good communicator and always has
Mm-hmm.
been. Like, she just has always been able to communicate very, very
Mm-hmm.
well. And so this was when she was still sleeping in her crib because she's in a big girl bed now. At some points, she would start to tell me that she would be scared. And like, she was always a good sleeper, like, never had any issues, happy to sleep, just a happy, easy baby. And then right around like 2, she started saying, like, one of the first things she said was, and I was like, oh, well, like, do you know what's making you feel scared? And she said, there's a guy knocking on the window asking to come in, and I don't like
That
him.
is
And I
terrifying.
thought, that is the scariest thing I've ever heard. Now, my first thought
Oh my
was,
God.
is there actually a man
Right,
knocking on
right.
the window?
Because this window is upstairs, right?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
upstairs and it's high and it's second story house. It's high enough, like there's not anything for anyone to stand on. So like it
Doesn't make
it's also like
sense.
her room is behind a gate, like someone would have to have a ladder,
Yeah.
like, which, okay, that has happened, but we have cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think that's what was happening. And I was like, that's horrifying. I don't like that. And she would say it a few times.
Like on different occasions.
on different
Oh my
occasions.
gosh.
And sometimes she would say like, I don't like them. I don't like when I don't want them in my room. I don't like when they are in my room. And I was like, who are they? And she was like, just these guys. And I was just like,
You got to give me
there's
more.
guys in our house. Like what? And she said they were orange, which was
That is
interesting.
interesting. I don't think you
And
told me that part
yeah,
before.
yeah, no, she said, and I was like, well, what do they look like? And she said they're orange. And I was like, okay, that's weird. I didn't say that to
Yeah,
her, but
yeah.
I was like, okay, like I'm sorry that happened. My initial reaction, my kind of like parenting style, I try really hard not to put any fear in them. And I try like to react and remain very neutral with stuff. So even with like spiders and snakes, like I'll say like we want to give snakes space because they think you might try and step on them or hurt them. So they're going to try and protect themselves. And so they're not bad. They just need extra space. So we get, if we see one, we step away. And same with spiders and like just like things like that, where I try to use language of like, not like good and bad,
Yeah.
but
I
more
love
just
that.
like
Yeah.
something, even if something happens where she gets scared, I'll say like, oh, that surprised you, or you weren't expecting that, or that startled you. So I always try to kind of calm her fears in that way, and just giving her other language besides just like immediately like that's
Panic. Yeah.
scary. So that's kind of how I handled it with her at that age. And that was kind of it once we moved her into, so I did like a cleansing of the house and like walked around and like bless have like crystals in all the corners of our house. Like I like went and I like talked to my acupuncturist, and there's like
You
a
went and looked for like guidance, like somebody tell me what to do.
yes. I like talked to my acupuncturist about this, and I talked to there's like a metaphysical like herbalist shop in town that I would like go in and be like, this is what's kind of
Mm-hmm.
happening with my kids. Like, what can I do to just kind of like cleanse the space? Like, it's freaking her out,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, good or bad. Like, she's just too young for
Right.
it. Like, and it's disrupting her
Yeah.
sleep. Like, I just want it out. And oh, one other thing, when she mentioned the guy at the
Mm-hmm.
window, I told her, you have the power to say, you are not welcome here. You're not allowed here. You have to go.
Yeah.
And so I told her, like, if that happens, if something is at your window or something is asking to come in that you don't like, you can say, you're not allowed here. You have to go away. And you have the power to do that. And they should listen. And if they don't, then you can tell mom. And I said the same thing. Like when she told me, I was like, you are not welcome here. This is not your home. You need to leave. And kind of
That was
like,
such good
that's what,
foresight to even tell her, because I think a lot of parents instinctually, like myself included, would have just like panicked at first, because that's scary for us. Like we don't
yes,
know
it
what to
is.
do in that
We're like,
situation.
what's going to hurt my
Yes.
child or come
And
after my
if
child?
I
Like,
were in that situation, especially like a few years ago, or if I wasn't as familiar with the things that I'm familiar with now, I wouldn't have necessarily known how to handle that. Like I think there's probably a lot of people who
mm-hmm.
have like had scary experiences like that themselves as adults, who just panic because they don't like, what do you do? So just, it's really amazing that you had enough foresight to be like, no, you do have the power to say, like, and she's learning that right off the bat, which is so, that's why we're doing
Mm-hmm.
this episode, like that's the kind of
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
that I feel like we need to know as parents, because you don't want to invalidate her experiences, like,
Right.
has probably happened to a lot of people where they told their parents something, the parents are like, oh, it's just your imagination.
It's nothing.
Yes.
There's nothing there. And if there really is something there, like, I mean, every culture in the world has some aspect of the spiritual
Yeah.
world, like spiritual entities and stuff. So like the concept of just denying its existence is
Not helpful.
doesn't align
Yeah.
even with
Yeah.
history and like just the way that our cultures work. So yeah, I think empowering our kids to know that they have a voice and like a power and a confidence in that moment. I think because there are going to be times when I can't get to her.
Right.
It's the middle of the night and the monitor's off or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't hear her. She's too scared to call for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
she can speak in that moment and like be there for herself, because as parents we're not always going to be able to physically
Right.
be there to
Did that
protect our
happen?
children.
Did she like try that and tell you about it?
I mean, she would say like, okay, and yes, there were times when she would say like, I told them to go away. And that was kind of it. And I don't know if that was something she said just then or like later on it happened again. Cause you know how kids are, like you ask them, you try and ask them more questions. They're like, yeah, but can I have a
Yeah,
snack?
yeah.
Like they're like, can we talk about something else now?
I'm bored. I've told you
Like
everything.
anytime that I'm like, yeah. So she told me that she had said that, but I don't know if it was like she just kind of said it when she was in her room or if it
Mhm.
happened again. But
Okay.
that was all that happened with her kind of in that room in her crib
Okay.
situation. And it wasn't until, the past like 6 months that more things started happening. So there was like a month period where I was having like really intense visions and like claircognizance where I was like just having the only way that I can say it is like is downloads
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
and the way that it happens for me is like often it's just like writing and like if you were to go back and like look at my journal you can't it just looks like gibberish but it helps like that
Oh
physical
yeah. So
aspect
kind
of
of
like
like
getting it
automatic
out.
writing, but you're using it.
Automatic
Yeah.
writing,
Mm-hmm.
yep. Yep. And sometimes it's even on my phone, like, and because it's just like I have to get these thoughts
Mm-hmm.
out. And sometimes it'll even be like a question and answer kind of
Mm-hmm.
format. Like I'll ask a question and then the answer just kind of
Mm-hmm.
comes to me and then I type it out and then
Exactly.
it just kind of flows like a conversation like
Mm-hmm.
that. So anyway, there was a month period where this was happening a lot and it was just very intense. Visions, dreams, like being woken in the night with like words, like this stuff that I've always had intense dreams, but this was very much more intense.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time that that was happening for me, actually, it was October of 2024,
Okay.
October of 2024, when all of this was happening. So again, it was, and I remember that because there's a woman that I follow online. She was talking about, the veil is always thin
Mm-hmm.
during October, but for that year specifically, it was very open and it was not closing. And it was just kind of this initiation into like a large
I
wave of
remember you
spiritual
telling me that.
energy.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So at the same time that this was happening with me, and the things that I would be like reading and researching just on my own, on my phone, not talking about it out loud to anyone really, just kind of digging into like these visions and things that I was seeing and feeling. Willa started speaking about seeing the things that I was learning about, like the entities that I would read, or like I literally went to the library, like checked out a bunch of books and was like, I just want to just know like more about like the culture, the history of like geographically, like where
And
do
she
these
would have just been turning
stories
3
come
at that
from?
point, right? Like not even 3, like
Yes.
2,
Yes.
almost 3. Okay.
She would have, yeah, she would not have even been three
Yeah.
years old at this point. So, because her birthday's in
Mm-hmm.
December. So, this was right before she turned 3. We would just be in the car. Like, I was getting her out of the car at the playground, and she said she saw it was a goddess that I had been reading about and thinking about. And she was like a water goddess. And like, I was reading about, because basically I was thinking about wanting to connect with her because I wanted this form of protection and this property that we have that has water on it. And I was like, I want to have an offering for her and just kind of like connect within the water in that way. Because at the time there's also a lot of flooding happening. And it's just,
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of like connect with
Yeah.
that. Like I'm very much like an earth
Mm-hmm.
person, like the plants and the soil and
Yes.
the water, like that all is very like much in my
I
nature.
love
So
that.
I've been digging into wanting to learn about this specific goddess and like what she likes and who she is and what she stands for and wanting to honor the water. And I was literally just getting her out of her car seat and she said, Mommy, I saw a woman on the boat and hold on, I wrote down exactly what she said. So one thing that I had read, so her name was Oshun
Mm-hmm.
and she's out of she's like East African
Okay.
tradition.
Okay.
And one thing that I was reading about was that she likes the color orange and oranges and orange flowers and this. And Willa just said she likes oranges. And I was like, what? And she was like, the lady that I saw, she likes oranges. And she said, Mom, I saw a genie on a boat and she really likes oranges. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And the only concept that she has of the word genie is like the genie from Aladdin. She literally said, Mom, I saw a genie on a boat and she really likes oranges. And I was like, that's
That is so
interesting. Like, what did
insanely specific, also.
so specific. She said she really likes oranges. And I said, what did the boat look like? Thinking like, because we live kind of near a boat ramp. So we watched the boats go by, and she said it was a really white boat. And I was like, where was the boat going? And she said it was going on the path on the water. And she said she was crying and that she saw Willa and she waved at her, and Willa waved back and smiled. And then she said that she smiled and they laughed. They like shared it like a giggle together. And as she was like going down the water, and it was just this moment of like, Willa saw like she was sad, like she was mourning and like she was upset about something. And then they just kind of like connected and had that like smile. And it was just so like, okay, this was this water spirit that I've been learning about. I was getting this information about how sick the water is basically, and how like we really have to start taking better care of the water and everything. So it was just this very
Wow. That's so
interesting,
symbolic.
like so symbolic. I was like, I don't know if this was from a dream or because the playground we were going to was by the boat ramp. It's like at this like river where boats come by. And so I don't know if that like clicked, like she remembered because we were at that park. But that was like a very specific thing where I like stopped in my track and I was like, what? Say it again. And I was like, took out my phone and I was like, what did you just say? And I was just trying to ask very neutral questions of like, oh, what, what did she look like? What?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, what did she? Did she say anything? And
wow. And because I almost
yeah,
feel like I know
yeah,
it's common also for gifts like that to run in families and have like a genetic tie
mm-hmm.
as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if you and Willa almost like end up developing like very similar gifts, like in how you
Yes.
see and receive things.
Well, I feel like there is something special with Willa. Like I can get more into it later, but there is something special with Willa. I don't even know if I've told you different aspects of it, but there's something specific that I remember doing. I'll get into that later, but there's something special about Willa. So within that same like month period, so this truly happened within like a few weeks. Again, like I said, I was going to the library.
This is the
a
one
lot
I remembered.
to like get books.
Okay, yeah.
Yes. And I was in the religion reference books and just checking out books on like different religions and like myths and symbolic, just like everything. I was like, I probably checked out like 20 books from the library.
I love it.
And this is like weird and probably meant nothing, but it freaked me out. And I was like, I'm not touching that book. It was a book on like demons and hell. And there was a rotten apple core sitting on top of that book. And I was like,
out of all the books, that is a little weird.
I don't like that. I'm not touching it. I don't need to get that book. I was like, I just don't, whatever. I was like, maybe somebody just put their trash there, but I was like, it just freaked me out enough.
Better safe than sorry.
And as I was like getting this vibe of like, I don't like that, Willa, who again is the most friendly person in the world, like when we go to the library, she's like trying to like go and sit down with like, there's a lot of homeless people at the library, people experiencing homelessness, going there for resources, all of that, check out books, use the computers, all of that. She's like loves them and like wants to hang out with them. And I normally am like, yeah, you can talk to them. It's fine. Anyway, it's not like she doesn't get freaked out by people. Yeah. Like she loves people. We are standing at the edge of this section and she like jumps back and runs behind me and like is hiding behind my legs. And I was like, what's wrong, baby? Like, what happened? And she said, Mom, don't go over there. There's a scary guy. And I was like, oh, like, and I think like it's a man or something that like, I don't know, had something that frightened her. Right. And I look, there's nobody there, like in this whole section
like
of the library.
Like you said earlier, if she's not afraid of like the biker guys with the long hair, you know what I mean? Like it's not.
Yes. And that's where I was like, okay, well, and I look and I'm like, there's nothing in there. And she said, Mom, no, it's a scary blue guy. And I was like, she was like, she said monster. She said, it's a scary blue monster. I think I wrote some of this down too.
This is,
spooky guy. In the reference book section, looking at the religious books, she stepped into the aisle and gasped, ran over to me and said, there's a spooky monster. Don't go over there. And when I asked her what it looked like, she said it was a blue monster. And I was like, okay, all right, we don't have to go over there. Like, that's fine. Like, I'm sorry that startled you, and at that point I was like also freaked out just what kind of energy is in these books. Cause some of them are like books you're not even allowed to check out of the library. They're like older books that yeah, that like you have to keep there and like you can't take home with you. So I was like, some of these, I don't know,
Yeah.
there can be energy
Right.
attached to them. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like we
I
can
feel like
leave.
books are definitely one of the objects that tend to carry, because words carry energy and meaning and, stories, and especially
hmm
really old books or books that tap into a
hmm
really heavy energy, like texts on religion and things like
Spell
that.
work,
Yes,
like
exactly.
yeah.
So that it would not surprise
hmm
me that would be a section that carries a lot of energy in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that was the next thing. And then,
Is there one about that involves an eagle?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So this was the other thing. We were in the car and she said, she was talking about how she really likes eagles. And I wrote, I didn't even know she knew what eagles were, like as a specific
Yeah.
bird. And she said they make a loud noise. And then she said, when I had wings, I would fly around and keep people safe. I was like, interesting. Okay, maybe she's just talking about, I don't know, being a unicorn or something and like to keep people safe. And then she said, I would fly around the bush and keep people safe. And then she said something weird, like something with her feet, like her feet, I don't
Yeah.
know. And I said, oh, what happened to your wings? And she said, my wings got cold. And, I grew up in Christian religion, which we've talked about before. And I instantly thought, I was like, a bush, that is so weird. And I thought about the burning bush. And I went back and I was like, I just went online and I was like, burning bush, reading just verses about
Yeah.
that.
Like in the
I
Bible
didn't
or
put this
in
in
a
this note in
text?
the Bible.
Okay.
Yes, in the Bible. And in the Bible, they describe angels that fly around the burning bush. And it's this whole thing that's describing, it's like symbolism for like our world and our earth. Okay, it's interesting. I'm not saying my child is God, but it says when Moses tried to approach the angel of the Lord in the burning bush, a change happens in the text. He is no longer called the angel of the Lord, but rather the Lord. In this passage, we learn that the angel of the Lord in the burning bush is the Lord himself. Anyway, but this concept of like angels, and like I know, like according to Christian religion, like people don't technically become angels and angels aren't people and like they're different entities like technically. So I'm not saying like, oh, my child was
Right.
an
Well, and
angel
it
of
could
the
be
Lord.
symbolic
But
too. Like it could
sim-
be, yeah.
symbolism of like she was a part of this energy that surrounded this visual. And the way that I see it, which again, a lot of my visions have been centered around like earth kind of
Mm-hmm.
things, the tree of life and like not burning because like again, and the Christian text describing the burning bush, it's not a fire because it didn't make
Right.
smoke and it didn't like go out. It wasn't breaking the bush down. It was just like this light,
Mm-hmm.
but it was still like a plant,
Right.
Anyway, it made me be like, there maybe is something there, like that she remembers because again like I believe our souls have always been
Mm-hmm.
and we go into the oneness and we come into earth and experience humanness and we go back into the oneness and I feel like energetically in a way she was remembering being in the oneness.
Yeah.
And part of that was protecting people and humanity.
Yes.
And so that's kind of like what I took away from it is like her remembering being in the spiritual
Yeah.
world of like surrounding that and like
I love that.
being able to move and fly. And
Yeah.
oh, the other thing that I mentioned with the eagle, there's also a lot of symbology in the Bible and also in like Native American traditions and different things of like there's the eagle head and there's I don't remember. It's like a four-headed
Yes. I
thing
know
and
what.
it has
Mm-hmm.
wings. It's like I think that's what the seraphim angel
Yes. Yeah.
is.
Yep.
That maybe it actually physically looks like that. Maybe again it's just symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but that's where I was also like she went from talking about eagles and how they're loud or whatever she likes them, but anyway,
Like there's
so
that
that was
connection in her mind.
like
Well, and I love this because I do
yes.
think Willa is like a very like specific case of her gifts or her memory. And she does like, if I think old soul, she's exactly the type of like child I would
Mhm.
envision. And, even what you were saying about like protecting humanity, like that's exactly how that's kind of the energy she gives off is she just loves
She
people. Like,
she loves people
yes.
like All of them.
Yes,
Loves them.
exactly. Like
Like
she's not
wants to connect
judging.
with every
Yes.
person she sees.
These people
Yeah.
don't scare her. Like she just sees, like it's like she looks at someone and it doesn't matter what they look like. She sees straight through to like the heart inside the person. And that, I mean,
Yep.
so yeah, I wouldn't, and I think it's important because I think a lot of times when we, especially I'm just thinking of myself, like, 5, 6 years ago, who would have heard kind of the stuff we're saying now and thought like that just sounds really out there, it sounds really outlandish, or it just, and I just want to make the point, especially as in the context of like parents and children, we are so quick to dismiss our inner knowings of stuff that might sound crazy to a very human logical mind.
Mhm.
And it's not.
Mhm.
Like these things that you pick up, that is part of your intuition. And like I think parents
Yeah.
need to give more credit to their intuition. Need to like, and it's like it's the same thing as like a
Yeah.
mom's instinct when your child is in danger or if, something's happening. That same sort of instinct applies to this type of thing as well, like listening and paying attention and picking up on and having like clear cognizant knowings about what might be happening with your child or like what past lives they might have had, or because them best, better than anyone.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I love that you're, like connecting dots for her based off of both stuff that logically and just like your own intuition, because I think you are next to her herself, you're the closest person that would really probably be able to like connect those dots. And then you as her mom are also the one who's able to then, like raise her and help her like understand her gifts and maybe where they came from or
Mhm.
how she can use them or how they unfold, like all of that stuff. And so I just want to encourage moms in general to like not dismiss those like intuitive
Yes.
feelings about your
Yes.
kids, or like maybe
Well,
they do have this gift, or maybe they had this past life. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, as moms, like that's what was so interesting about this really intense several weeks where all of these things happened was also when I was having all of these things. And there were times when literally I would be having this conversation in my head, and then she would start speaking out loud to that and like answering some of those questions or like commenting on the conversation I was literally having in my head. Like I was like, and it made me like kind of stop and be like,
whoa,
what? Like
what's happening?
I was like, did I say that? Like I was just started kind of questioning my reality. But I was like, whatever. Like I just think that, mothers have the ability to really connect to their
Absolutely.
children in a deep way. And I think every mother probably knows that and feels that on some level. So that's just been very cool.
So that was all going back to like how from the beginning, Willa has just stood out among like all 6 of our kids combined as this just
Yeah.
like very old soul, like very connected, very gifted, like very, like she's just different. She just is.
She just,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, I love that's a big reason why I wanted to have this episode, because I feel like there are kids who's maybe like whose gifts or, who's just like knowing is just a little bit more, it's like a little bit stronger. There's less barrier between them and their gifts, or maybe them and their past lives or whatever it is. And so I definitely wanted to like mention her. But I also want to talk on real quick, like I think there's a lot of parents who just think, well, I've never seen my kid, say anything weird or see anything in a corner, or like, I guess I just don't know. And I want to touch on this, understanding that a lot of these gifts, everybody has gifts. And if
Yes.
you know your
Yes.
child's personality, then you probably know at least likely what kind of gifts they may have. And so, like, for example, I wrote down like some examples for my kids, because we've had a couple things where they've had a dream and I'm like, that is really could be very symbolic, but a lot of stuff is just like their personality. So with Elliot, my 11-year-old, like I said, she's very interested in the occult already. So like I almost feel like, because what's interesting is now I know it's more popular today than it used to be, but I don't remember being super interested. I was interested in like zodiac signs, but I didn't have like a draw. Now I also didn't have as much opportunity, so that's probably some of it. But she is just so drawn to astrology, to just anything taboo, anything occult, like anything. She's also just kind of drawn to like death and what happens after death and what like just
she's comfortable with dark
very
things.
much. And so is my youngest, Scorpio. Now if there's other parents out there with Scorpios, y'all know Scorpios just love talking about death, and it's really, really creepy until you realize that other Scorpios are also like that, and you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better. But when when she started just like asking all these questions or making jokes about death, I'm like, I did not feel comfortable with. Why are we doing this? but that is like a Scorpio trait. They are drawn to the extremes. Anyway, my oldest, yes, like very, she's a very deep thinker, very drawn to the spiritual. I could very much see her. I would not be surprised if she ended up doing some sort of spiritual teaching, because she's a good thinker, and she thinks deeply, she thinks clearly, and she likes to learn. She just loves learning. Like she, up until this past year, had been at not up until, but just this last year, she was at a Montessori school. And one of the things that her teachers just adored her and just talked about how, Montessori is very, they encourage the kids to be very self-sufficient and, to seek out your own answers, go after things you're interested in. If you're interested in this topic, go after it. And she was just so good at that, and we did that when she was homeschooled as well. But she's just always been like, she's interested. She went through a phase where she was super interested in ancient Egypt. I'm like, I was never interested. Now you were interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like,
I was.
She was so interested in ancient Egypt. So for weeks, she would just like research ancient Egypt and mummies and their beliefs and like all of these things. Again, to me, that's evidence of like past life. Like maybe she did have some tie to ancient Egypt.
Yes, having a connection to a specific region.
Because I'm like, I think
absolutely.
It's cool, but not so cool that I'm going to focus on it for weeks at a time and like learn every little thing I can. She watched YouTube video after documentary after documentary. She's 11. I mean, she was like 8 or 9 at the time when she was doing that. So I would say that's not super normal behavior for an 8 or 9-year-old. So just like that kind of stuff. I think there's a chance she's like clairvoyant, maybe claircognizant, because she does tend to, again, she's very like thought heavy,
processing.
Yes,
yeah.
And she processes a lot, and she's a lucid dreamer, which this is crazy. I've never once, not one time. Now I don't love my dreams tend to freak me out. And so I think I almost maybe have like a mental block where I'm like, I don't need to know what that dream was. Just like, don't tell me. It freaks me out. I overthink my dreams, and I'm like, oh, I can't. Elliot has lucid dreams constantly, where she's always aware in her dream that she's dreaming. I just think that is so wild, first of all, because they're not supposedly that common. But also I think that may play into the, like, that to me speaks to clairvoyance, where like clear seeing.
Yeah. And her mind space is
very open. Yes.
Yeah.
So anything like that. So like, none of this would be super obvious to the outside world. But to me, as her mom, picking up on her personality and her habits and just little things, like I can start to sense like what gifts she may have. And we do talk about it sometimes, but like as she gets older, like that's something I would probably talk about more directly with her. Like we kind of talk about it more just like when it comes up in discussion, and they've heard me mention different things. But like the more, because I really only I don't ever want her to feel like I'm beating her over the head with it. As she asks questions or as these things come up, to me, those are good opportunities to like have the discussions. It's like, as much as they want to know about it, I will share with them about it, because I don't want to scare them. Because like, just to move into Boa next, like he is very sensitive and he's more likely to be scared about something. So
yeah.
And he is aware. Like I said, he's very energetically sensitive. He's the one that's more likely. I'm like getting a ringing in my left ear right now also as I say this, which is so random. That does happen occasionally on the podcast. But he's like very energetically open and sensitive. And like he's very afraid of the dark. Very afraid of the dark. So again, that could be clairvoyance, where like it's possible that he is seeing things that maybe he doesn't even know what he's seeing. But he just, to this day, he will not sleep with all the lights off. Like he's just so scared. And I think that is evidence of, again, feeling more than you know how to process.
The clairsentience of just like feeling,
like knowing that there's something
change in the energy,
knowing that there might be things nearby, but being afraid of it because you don't know what it is. But I'm also hesitant to talk too much to him about it, because as soon as the recognition comes in that he isn't alone, or that there are things on the other side, that brings in more fear, even if I'm not presenting it that way. So I just have to be careful in how I'm presenting it. So with him, I usually will talk to him about like, you have your guides, you have angels, you're protected already, and you can always ask for protection. Like, and like you were mentioning with Willa, I've told him, and he's gotten a little bit better, but I've told him, who are in charge of this. Like you have the ability to ask for protection, or to make it known to anything that is within your energy field that they're not welcome. And that, like I'm not consenting to any outside energy in my room or nearby. sometimes I think it scares him to even like go there. So I don't push it, but I do let him know that that's always an option that is available to him. He's the one I
Yeah.
usually surround with like crystals or put like bigger crystals in his room to just kind of help him understand and feel that like extra protection. Because he's very,
You know, it just came to
what?
me. It just reminded me of something that I'm like cutting you off to give you advice for
Go for it.
to
Do
help
it.
Bowen in this
Do it.
situation. But when I was going through all of this with Willa, and I was like seeking out guidance from like my acupuncturist and just like people more
Yeah,
in
yeah,
this
yeah.
world than I am, my acupuncturist was like, "Do you ever do the golden like bubble
Oh, I do
visual?"
that. I think we've talked about this before.
Yes, yes, and I was gonna say even not to like put this responsibility on Elliot, but knowing that it's something that she's interested and maybe has a natural ability in of that mind space, encouraging her to create. This is something that I did when my acupuncturist told me about encouraging, like kind of like you know the movie The Incredibles, the daughter Violet, where she can create like a force field, like
Oh,
bubble,
yes.
kind of envisioning that of like a golden dome, like bubble, like around kind of like growing out from yourself and like through the room, like and through the house, and kind of just creating a golden filled light bubble around your house. And like you can do it too, but then maybe that's something because Elliot's more comfortable in this world, encouraging her to play with
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'm
that
like, I feel like she would
visual.
want to do it, but she wouldn't want to tell me she's doing it.
Yes,
They get to
yes,
that age and they're
yeah.
like, well, I might do it, but I'm not going to
Where they're
tell
like,
you.
yeah.
But yes,
Just watch that movie and be like,
oh, I
huh,
wonder if you could do this. I know
yeah.
I should.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah. The other thing, which I feel like you've probably done before, is like aromatic
yes. You know what's
oh my
funny? I
gosh,
actually have a funny story.
spray. Yeah.
You actually gave me this spray for like my birthday or Mother's Day or something, and it's like calm the fuck down spray.
Oh yeah.
And it's like lavender,
Yeah.
magnesium, or something in the spray. So I would have that by my bed. Well, then once my kids could read, they were like, "Why do you have this?" Calm the fuck down. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Listen, don't."
Blame your aunt.
Yes, blame your aunt. But that is actually ended up being like the go-to spray with Bowen.
Yeah.
And so now, of course, I'm out of it. So I'm like, I need to find out where she got that. Got some more.
Yes.
But
I use I give Willa it's frankincense and myrrh,
oh, that's
which
good. Yeah.
I had just because I liked the scent of it, but now like I have it, I always have in the kids' room. Some of it they sell it at like Earth Fare and like Whole Foods and
Oh,
stuff,
that's
and it's
true.
just
I could just go to
frankincense
like
and
Whole
myrrh
Foods and get like
spray.
that's what I need to do.
Yes, and I told Willa like this is like a protective like, and again intention like if
Yes.
she believes
It
that
could be water
this
and
is
you're just setting the intention of,
protection.
yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. So she uses that, and she very confidently is like, this keeps the monsters
I
away.
love that. That's a good
And
idea, actually. Rather than
yeah,
using mine, I should just get him his own that he can.
yeah.
Because I think he would. Yeah, that really does like those like tactile things. I think really help him, like the spray, the
Mhm.
crystal. Also, interestingly enough, Bowen and Emma, so the two younger ones. Elliot's like again, she's just not that scared. Like she's just not scared of stuff.
Yeah.
She doesn't like just care. she's
Yeah.
very much a badass. But my younger two, who are definitely more empathetic, more sensitive, they both will constantly ask me to do like a little Reiki session on them at night. So that's something I started doing because Elliot never gets bad dreams. It's so interesting how different they are. Bowen and Emma will be the two that if they get a nightmare, they'll come to me in the middle of the night kind of thing. And so they are both the ones we started doing Reiki before bed as a way to kind of like help them clear out thoughts. And I'm not like a certified Reiki practitioner, but again, it's just intention setting. So like I'm just setting the intention to remove like any sort of like negative thoughts, any like scary cords that might be attached to something they saw on TV or some scary thought that they keep repeating in their head, just to detach them from all of that and, remove that. And then I go in with like, again, just setting the intention, visualizing in my mind, like a bright white healing light, like calling in like source angels, whatever, to help just clear the energy. And then I usually do the golden bubble, like just around them. And what's interesting is if I forget that part, especially Emma, she'll be like, you didn't do the protective bubble. So I'm like, oh, excuse me. Sorry.
That's so cute.
Literally, she did that last night.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I will say that is something that they tend to like, that really, again, helps like calm them down. So just if, for anybody listening, if you have kids that are scared and you're open to like, bringing in these types of like tools and things, those are all things that have really helped us. Cause I feel like, yes, the more sensitive children tend to have more fear around like the things that they just don't know how to process or don't have words for, whether it's something they
Yeah.
see, whether it's something they feel, whether it's something they just kind of like sense in their aura and their energy field. Like they just,
Yeah.
and adults are like that too, where it's like, you might know something is there. Like I've had experiences like that. I know something is in this room with me, but I don't know what it is. And
Yeah.
that's catching me a little off guard.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, so that's Bowen. And I would say he has clairsentience, like clear feeling. And I would also say he's like a transmuter. Anybody with like the deep feelings, like that empath, like you have really deep feelings, I think tends to be people who often made a contract coming here to transmute energy. Like they agreed that they felt comfortable taking on a lot of energy from a soul perspective, taking on a lot of energy and transmuting it. Like they are good energy processors, or at least learn to be as they grow up good energy processors. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
Bowen is going to end up being that, so I'm so intentional with I want to be very intentional with how he grows into his manhood and really allowing him to
Mm-hmm.
have a positive understanding of emotions in men and how,
Yeah.
what society says versus like the truth, and, that he's allowed to feel things and how to process those things in a healthy way and how to like really embody like a healthy masculinity with all of that emotion. So that's something
Yeah.
we're like still really like working through and in the thick of, and probably will be throughout, from now when he's 8 all the way throughout his teenage years. But I'm just very always aware of that. So I really want to be careful with how, I'm helping him through his emotions. So that's a spiritual aspect that we really work hard on. But yes, I think I could see him being like a transmuter and a healer. And I did have an energy
Yeah.
healer, and I know you know this, but I've had an energy healer tell me one time that myself and all 3 of my children were healers. And the further I get from that, I'm like, I really don't think that necessarily means like direct physical, but I think each of my kids has a way of helping the collective that is healing in a sense. And I think Bowen in particular could be like a transmuter. And I'm interested
Yeah.
to see as a male and as a man, like as the whole collective of masculinity and the masculine is kind of like in the middle beginning stages of like changing, I'm
Mm-hmm.
interested to see how he grows into that later. So that's kind of a long-term
Yeah.
topic. But then Emma is very much, I feel like Emma is the healer. She's just like, her energy is she's just like fun, and she's funny, and she's sassy, and she's a big personality.
Has a lot of
Has a
momentum,
lot of
like
momentum. Yes.
a
And
starter.
she's 5.
Like,
So like she's still, I'm sure there will still be things as she grows that I feel like I'll pick up on more of, but she is definitely very empathic. I think she definitely has clairsentience, like feeling, but I think she's also a transmuter, but in a different way than Bowen. Like I feel like feels deeply and transmutes things that way. I think she is more just like she can like transmute faster. Like I don't even know how to explain it. I feel like her energy is just very uplifting in general. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong,
mm-hmm.
she's Scorpio and she's real sassy, and she, she can get mean when she wants to be. She does not let her older siblings bully her. But I think in general, she's just got this very, like fiery, strong, like energy that really just kind of brings people around her upwards. Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
laughter or just fun, like, and so again, I feel like there's a lot of things, like as you look at your kids, you don't have to necessarily put them into a box of like,
Right.
oh, you're psychic,
This is their
or
skill. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
let it develop, but also just encourage them with their sensitivities in any general area.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you're sensitive to can be a gift, and
Yeah.
just embodying
Yeah.
that and embracing it, and not because things like big emotions, that could be hard. That's a difficult thing to have and to work through.
Right.
And so, excuse me, not seeing that as a negative thing, like, oh, I have a kid who's a deep feeler. It's hard.
But teaching him how to release that and let it into the light, like
Exactly. How to
like
process
get it
it.
out of his
Yes,
body.
what you
Yeah.
do when you
Mm-hmm.
feel all those big emotions. We could probably do a whole nother I love the amount of times we could say we could do a
Yeah.
whole nother episode on this. But yes,
I know.
we could
I
do a whole
know.
nother episode on like kids and processing emotions and like how to go about that with kids. And not because I'm an expert, but just because I have to do it a lot. Just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
helping them process. And so,
Well, when you said you wanted to talk about this, some things like came to me of like just in thinking about this, um, talking about encouraging and just helping your kid navigate their spiritual gifts, I thought about just our natural senses. So like
Yeah.
tasting, smelling, seeing, hearing, feeling, thinking about those. And it's something that I've seen just naturally kind of pick up in Willa of like, we'll be listening to a song and she'll say, Mommy, is that the harmonica? I'll be like, yeah, that's the harmonica in the song. Or Mommy, is that the piano? Like her recognizing the different instruments. And I was thinking about like as adults, how we strengthen our spiritual gifts. And I feel like a lot of people, how they first kind of tap into this world is through meditation, which seems so simple, but I was thinking about how to encourage that in kids and not even just like meditate, which you can, but some kids are just not going to be able to do that. But the way that I kind of use that in my parenting is like giving my children quiet space and like uninterrupted time to like think and notice. And a lot of it is like the mindfulness. If she's really intently like watching this ant, like your ability, so much of spiritual gifts and just spirituality in general is the ability to notice. And like
Oh,
the
well
things
said.
are all around us.
Mm-hmm.
It is just if we actually recognize that they're there
Yes.
through whatever kind of sense that is. So if you pick up on a certain sound or a chime or the ringing in your ear or a sensation of cold on your shoulder, or you walk into a room and you smell a mint, or like all of these senses are spiritual. But in modern society, we've kind of like dulled our senses. And so I think part of just encouraging that in our children, like it's natural, like these things aren't supernatural,
Right.
they're natural. Like these are things that our bodies really are capable of doing, but it's something like, again, like we have muscles, but if you don't move your muscle, then it's going to feel weak. So that was something like just in its simplest form. If you're sitting here thinking like my kid doesn't have anything, they do. Like it's, again, it's just, it's part of us all naturally. It's just giving yourself even and your child space to, I think it just starts with like paying
Yeah.
attention.
I love the idea just in general of just like letting kids be bored and like, yeah, giving them that space,
Mm-hmm.
which like, I'm like, honestly, my kids could have more of that because the problem is when they're home, there's 3 of them. And so they're not usually like spread out enough they're always like
Yeah,
together
yeah.
doing something. But in general, yeah. And I think that comes back around probably. It's like when they're little, they have more opportunity to be alone. And then the older they get and they want that independent space, like, Elliot, my 11-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
probably Claire too, like she wants the more independent, like, I just want to be by myself. Y'all leave me
Right.
alone. So it comes back around. But yeah, I love the idea of just like letting them be because yeah, you're right. That is when, for adults too, like,
Yeah.
that is when we have these moments of realizations or downloads or epiphanies or just thinking through things, which is such a big part of, like if I had never taken the time to meditate, like all
Mm-hmm.
these years, I wouldn't be where I am. Like I wouldn't
Oh, yeah.
have the
Yeah.
understandings I understand and wouldn't have the gifts at the point that I have them at now. Like,
Well, you know what's crazy too, for those who are, practicing Christianity or have a Christian history or upbringing, something else, anytime Jesus wanted to connect with the Holy Spirit, he went into the wilderness to be alone. Not that you can't have a spiritual happening like with other
oh,
people,
you
but the
can.
connection, you can pick up on so much more when you have that quiet,
Yes.
alone
It
space,
allows
which
your
again, as a
brain.
parent,
Yeah,
is very
I know,
hard.
right? When you're on the toilet.
But once you encourage your kids to also value
Yes.
that time, and if you can kind of bring that into themselves, you as a parent can also get more quiet
Yes,
time.
exactly. Quiet
So
time for
like
everybody.
encourage it in them, and then maybe in a few years you'll get it
Yeah.
yourself, hopefully.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's just, yeah, it's encouraging people to go within, encouraging your kids to go within, because as a kid, that's not always, I think, the natural inclination. Maybe the more introverted you are, it can be. But I think the kids are just so like, what's going on around me? I'm engaging with the world. You have to kind of pause
Mm-hmm.
and like go
You're soaking
inside.
things up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're little sponges. And so they don't always recognize like, how much can happen in those moments of quiet, so yes, helping them like have moments where their brain gets to cut out all the distractions, the noises and the screens and the whatever it is. I think that, yes, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that can be really helpful. And speaking of just like tools and resources, I wanted to kind of like just touch on that really quick before we end. We talked about like helping them like not be afraid of like the gifts and how to talk to them about that. But I think also like you were talking about, Reiki and acupuncture for you, things like that can also be really helpful for kids. Like it doesn't have to be acupuncture. I don't, not every kid would, maybe, I think it'd be safe, but I don't think every kid would be like comfortable with that.
Yeah.
But
like down with that. Yeah.
But like Reiki, whether it's just you at home, like, I was saying my 2 younger kids before bed, they love and they ask for it. And I'm not offering it. Like they genuinely ask for it all the time. And clearly to me, I'm like, okay, well, clearly it is helping them in some way, at least feel calmer and feel safer before they go to bed. And that in itself is good enough for me, like that is, regardless of how productive my actual Reiki skills are, it's really the intention and what's going on in their minds that's most important. So doing things like that, like books, any kind of like books that kind of help just like helps give them words or pictures to help place things like angels or feeling protected. And that might be like more spiritual books. You and I would probably be really good at like finding and putting together like a book list for kids of like spiritual books. Cause we should do that. But yeah, and just like grounding techniques, like when they're really in their head, like helping kids, even if they're not yet ready to like meditate and sit quietly, helping them envision stuff is really like, I've helped my kids before, like envision the bubble around themselves, like if I'm not there, you can set your own bubble of light around yourself that protects you. Like you can help, like when they're really, deep breaths are a big thing I also do with my kids. I'm just thinking of ways that I typically calm them down, because especially my younger two get really like panicky and wound up. Like speaking of bugs, and I wished I had the foresight to be more calm about bugs when they were younger, because my middle and youngest are freaking going out. They love being outside, but every bug that comes by is like the end of the world, and it's just really dramatic and whatever. But and just encouraging them when they get in their heads or they get panicky or feel fearful about something, having them envision being grounded into the ground like a tree, and like that, again, you're putting tools in their pockets to help them kind of have a visual to help them calm down and step into their bodies more instead of being all wound up in their heads. Also giving them crystals, which you have to pick carefully because crystals can break and, but like I have often given my kids crystals to like put in their pillowcase. And it's just like, obviously, I believe that the crystals have energy that is helping, but also in their minds, just the fact that they are adding another mental layer of protection, I think that goes a long way as well. So I feel like there's lots of different things helping your kids, like journal or draw pictures if they're too little to journal. Just to draw things that help them process their emotions. Like, oh, you're feeling really angry, you're really sad, you're scared. Like, why don't you draw a picture that might help you feel better, get those feelings out of your body.
And even asking like, what color, like, does that, like, which some kids will be like, whatever, but like some kids that are kind of more, I forget if it's left brain, right brain, but like more in touch with the arts or creativity, like would be like, oh yeah, this like is yellow. Like, I don't know, like it.
Yeah. Anything that's helping them take an emotion or a feeling and transmute it into something more physical is helping them process it. It's like when kids go to therapy and they have like play therapy or whatever, like it's that same idea of like kind of taking the emotions and working them out of the body through a certain, action or something. So yeah, I think a color, is a great idea. That's all the ones I can think of besides like actual counseling.
I don't know if this is like very beginner level, I guess, but if any of your listeners have heard of on YouTube, there's a girl who does kids yoga, and it's called Cosmic Kids.
Oh, I've heard of this.
And yes, my kids love it. I discovered it when I was a nanny. Some of the kids that I watched did it. And she has a lot of like mindfulness sessions. Like some of them are just mindfulness and some of them are like a story through yoga, and that like again, mind body connection, like spiritual, like there's always kind of like an arc to the story, and that it always ends in savasana.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, where you're
Right.
laying. That's how the kids session ends too. And you would be surprised at your child's ability to, like, I was shocked, like watching her do the whole
Willa.
thing and then
See,
finish,
but I
like,
feel
yes.
like
And
Willa's not a good example because she is, I can
then,
absolutely picture Willa doing yoga. She's
yeah,
such an
yeah.
old
Well, I
soul.
think too, if it's like one of your children alone, like I
Yeah.
feel like it is hard when you have
Then they
like
get too
if there's like if it's
silly.
Bowen and
Yeah.
Emma, they would like
Yeah. They'd
do
be
start
making
doing
like
something else.
butt
But like if it was
jokes.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
Emma, like I feel like she could
That's
sit and do
true.
it. Because it's just that ability to stay focused. But it's cool, like at the end where you're like laying and they do breathing and she's like talking through kind of the lesson, and it's cool.
Yeah.
The nanny family, the child that I was watching, he had like he was on the spectrum and definitely had a lot of ADHD tendencies and like a lot of hyperactivity, and it was very helpful for
Okay.
him. So like I would say like even if you think like this is not something my child could do, I
Try
would
it.
say give it a
Okay.
shot because it's pretty
Okay.
cool.
Yeah. I'll try it. I
So
just,
Cosmic
Cosmic
Kids
Kids
on
yoga.
YouTube.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I could totally see Willa doing that. Like
Yeah.
just this little old soul. She'd be like, she would
Oh,
start like reciting some ancient language or
well,
something.
she started because the way that she begins and ends the session is saying namaste. And so Willa started greeting people. Like instead of saying hello, she would say namaste. And I'm like, these people probably think we are
That is the most
so,
Willa thing I have ever heard. She is
again, my
so,
child.
because Willa is so funny because she's like so outgoing and bubbly, but Willa can also be so serious. Where I feel like my kids would start
Mhm.
making dumb butt jokes or like they would just like laugh it
Yes.
off and be really immature. Willa would be like, "No, we're taking this fully seriously," and she would just
Yes.
embody it
Yeah.
like so old soul. Like she just is like this old little like chatty grandma in a 3-year-old body. Like she just like
Yeah.
she makes me laugh. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
I know. We should interview her
Oh
one
my
day.
gosh, we should. Willa, tell us about your past lives. What do you remember? Thank you so much. This was so fun. Obviously, it's always so fun.
I know. This was fun.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. We'll see ya.
So that was the episode with my sister Allie. I hope that you enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun recording it. Again, don't forget to leave a review. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. There's now 2 live tiers that you can check out where you can get a glimpse of those 2 extra episodes or have access to live group calls and group trainings and all of that good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Dare Me to Prosper, and I will see you guys in the next one.